Olivia Bennet stood before the mirror adjusting the necklace that felt too heavy against her collarbone. The black dress she wore was simple, but elegant, the best she could afford on her librarian's salary. Behind her reflection, she could see her husband Richard pacing impatiently. "Are you ready yet? We're going to be late, and this is Jason's first event as vice president," Richard said, checking his watch for the third time in 5 minutes. "I need to make a good impression." Olivia nodded, swallowing the reminder that it was her careful budgeting that had paid for his custom suit. "I'm ready," she said quietly. The drive to the Harrington Financial Group's annual gala was filled with Richard's nervous chatter about Jason Blackwell, his direct supervisor and newly appointed vice president. Olivia had heard enough about Jason to know he was the kind of man who valued status above substance, much like her husband had become in recent years. "Remember, these people are important," Richard instructed as they pulled up to the venue. "Just smile, and don't talk about your books or those literacy programs. Nobody wants to hear about that tonight." 8 years of marriage had taught Olivia when to pick her battles. Tonight wasn't worth fighting over. She nodded again and stepped out of the car. The ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and the jewelry of the corporate elite. Olivia felt immediately out of place among the designer gowns and practiced laughter. Richard's hand at the small of her back guided her firmly toward a group of men in expensive suits. "Richard." "There you are," called a tall man with a sharp smile. "We were just discussing the Morgan account." "Jason, this is my wife," Olivia, Richard said. His introduction so quick it was almost an afterthought. Jason Blackwell's eyes slid over her with barely concealed disinterest. "Charmed," he said without offering his hand. "Richard tells me you work at a library, was it?" "Yes, I'm the head of community outreach at the Central Library," she replied. "We've recently developed a program for adult literacy that's shown remarkable, fascinating," Jason interrupted, already turning back to Richard. "Now about those quarterly projections." For the next hour, Olivia stood silently at Richard's side, effectively invisible. Occasionally, she caught fragments of conversations about summer homes and exotic vacations, worlds away from the budget spreadsheets that dominated her evenings at home. "Would you mind getting me a drink, dear?" Richard asked during a momentary lull. As she walked away, she heard Jason's voice drop slightly. "Bit plain for you, isn't she? Not exactly the trophy wife I would have expected." Richard's laugh felt like a slap. "We married young, before I knew better." Olivia's fingers tightened around the stem of the wineglass as she stood frozen by the bar. Across the room, she noticed a distinguished man watching the exchange with narrowed eyes. Something about him seemed vaguely familiar, though she couldn't place where she might have seen him before. As their eyes met briefly, a memory stirred at the edges of her consciousness from long before Richard. Before this life of quiet diminishment had become her reality, the champagne tasted bitter as Olivia forced herself to return to Richard's side. Jason Blackwell was now holding court with several other executives, his booming laugh drawing attention. From across the room, "Here she is," Jason said as she approached. "We were just discussing the partner track, Richard. You know what they say behind every successful man is a woman who looks the part." The others chuckled while Richard smiled stiffly. "Olivia has her ... strengths, though not in fashion, evidently," Jason quipped, eyeing her dress. "My Catherine would never be caught dead and off the rack at a company event." Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks. "I prefer to invest in education rather than designer labels," she said quietly. Jason's eyebrows shot up, spirited. "Careful, Richard. That kind of attitude might hold you back. In our world, appearances matter." "Olivia knows her place," Richard replied, shooting her a warning glance. "She just forgets sometimes." The conversation shifted to golf memberships, effectively dismissing her again. Olivia excused herself, needing a moment of solitude. She found refuge on a quiet balcony overlooking the hotel gardens, the cool night air soothing her burning cheeks. "They don't deserve your tears," came a deep voice from behind her. Olivia quickly wiped her eyes, embarrassed to be caught in a vulnerable moment. Turning, she found herself face to face with the distinguished man she'd noticed earlier, Thomas Westbrook, the CEO of Harrington Financial. Recognition dawned slowly, memories flooding back from 15 years ago. "Mr. Westbrook," she breathed. "I didn't realize." Double quotes, his eyes crinkled with warmth. It's been a long time, Olivia. I wasn't sure you'd remember me. How could I forget? She whispered. Thomas moved to stand beside her at the balcony rail. I watched that exchange with Blackwell. And your husband. Not the company culture I foster at Harrington. Olivia shook her head. It's nothing. I'm used to it. You shouldn't be, he said firmly. The Olivia, I remember, would never accept such treatment. Memories of a rain-soaked night in a small coffee shop came rushing back, a desperate young man, contemplating ending everything after losing his family in a tragic accident. And the college student working the late shift who spent hours talking him back from the edge? That was a lifetime ago, Olivia murmured. For me too, Thomas acknowledged. But I never forgot what you said to me that night. The sounds of the gala beckoned them back inside. As they re-entered, Richard immediately appeared at her side, his expression shifting rapidly between confusion and opportunity as he recognized. The CEO, Mr. Westbrook? What an honor, Richard gushed. I see you've met my wife. Thomas raised an eyebrow. Actually, Olivia and I are old acquaintances. Before Richard could respond, Jason joined them, clearly eager to ingratiate himself with the CEO, as introductions were made. Olivia leaned close to Thomas and whispered, Sometimes the darkest nights give way to the brightest futures. Your daughter would be proud of the man you've become. Thomas froze, those words her exact words, from 15 years ago, striking him like lightning. He turned to face her fully, his eyes suddenly glistening. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, his voice carrying across the room, I'd like to introduce you all to someone very special. The ballroom fell silent as Thomas Westbrook's arm settled firmly around Olivia's shoulders. She could feel Richard tensing beside her, confusion etched across his features. Many of you know my story, Thomas continued, his voice steady but emotional. 15 years ago, I lost my wife and daughter in an accident. What most don't know is that I nearly ended my own life that night. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Jason Blackwell shifted uncomfortably, shooting a questioning glance at Richard, who looked equally bewildered. A young woman working at a coffee shop saw something in me worth saving, Thomas said. She spent hours talking to me, sharing her wisdom despite being half my age. She told me that the darkest nights give way to the brightest futures, and that my daughter would want me to live fully. He turned to Olivia, his expression reverent. That woman was Olivia Bennett. Richard's jaw dropped. You never told me you? Never asked, Olivia replied softly. Thomas addressed the room again. I've spent years looking for her, to thank her properly. Tonight, by some miracle, here she is being belittled by people who don't recognize her extraordinary worth. Jason's face had turned ashen. Mr. Westbrook? I had no idea. Clearly, Thomas cut him off. Olivia isn't just the head of community outreach at the Central Library. She has transformed literacy rates in our city's most underserved areas. Her program has become a national model, though you'd never hear that from her. Olivia blinked. Back tears as Thomas continued, counting achievements she'd mentioned in passing to Richard over the years' achievements. Her husband had dismissed as inconsequential. In fact, Thomas announced, Harrington Financial will be establishing a new educational foundation, and I can think of no one better qualified to direct it than Olivia. But the rest of the evening passed in a blur. Suddenly, Olivia found herself surrounded by the same executives who had ignored her earlier, now eager to discuss her work. Richard hovered at the periphery, alternating between bewilderment and attempts to insert himself into conversations. I don't understand, Richard hissed. When he finally managed to pull her aside, why didn't you tell me you knew Thomas Westbrook? The same reason you don't know most things about me anymore, Richard, she answered. You stopped listening years ago. The drive home was unnervingly quiet. Richard gripped the steering wheel tightly, his thoughts visibly racing behind his carefully composed expression. This could be good for us, he finally said. With your connection to Westbrook, my promotion could come sooner than expected. Olivia stared out the window at the passing streetlights. Is that all you took from tonight? Be practical, Olivia. This is an opportunity. Yes, she agreed. It is. The following morning, Olivia woke early. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of possibility unfurling within her. She quietly made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with her laptop. Researching apartment listings, her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Breakfast meeting to discuss the foundation? Shamu Jodan at Lucia's Cafe. Thomas. As she typed her reply, Richard appeared in the doorway, his expression carefully controlled. Jason called, he said. He wants to apologize for his misunderstanding last night. Olivia closed her laptop. There was no misunderstanding, he meant. Every word, and so did you. Richard's facade cracked slightly. You're overreacting. Besides, things are different now. We need to capitalize on this Westbrook connection. I'm not a networking opportunity, Richard, Olivia said, rising from the table. And for the record, I have a meeting with Thomas this morning. Alone. She walked past him toward the bedroom, feeling lighter with each step. The ripples from last night were just beginning, and for once, Olivia was embracing the change. 3 weeks after the gala, Olivia sat in her new office, overlooking the city park. The Westbrook Foundation for Literacy and Education occupied the entire 14th floor of the Harrington Financial Building. And though the space was still being furnished, it already felt more like home than the house she shared with Richard. A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Your 10 o'clock is here, announced Monica, her newly hired assistant. Olivia smoothed her blouse's silk piece she'd purchased with her substantial new salary and nodded. Send them in, please. Richard entered, looking uncharacteristically uncertain. Had barely spoken in recent weeks, passing like strangers in their own home as Olivia worked late and left early. Nice office, he commented, glancing around at the modern furnishings. Suits you. Thank you, Olivia replied, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. What brings you here, Richard? He cleared his throat. Jason's been transferred to the Dallas office. Heard. People are saying Westbrook personally requested the transfer after the gala. Olivia folded her hands on her desk. Thomas makes his own decisions. I didn't ask for that. Richard leaned forward. Look, I know things have been strained between us lately. I may have underestimated your capabilities. But we can fix this. Start fresh. Why now? Olivia asked. Because I suddenly have influence. It's because my career matters now that it's connected to your world. That's not fair, Richard protested. I've always supported you. Olivia shook her head sadly. Supporting me would have meant valuing my work even when it didn't benefit you. Would have meant defending me when Jason insulted me, not agreeing. With him, I've made mistakes, Richard admitted, his voice softening. But 15 years of marriage has to count for something. 8 years, Olivia corrected. We've been married 8 years, Richard. The fact that you don't remember that says everything. A heavy silence fell between them. Through the glass walls of her office, Olivia could see Thomas walking by. Deep in conversation with the Foundation's legal counsel, he glanced in, offering a warm smile before continuing down the hallway. Richard caught the exchange. Are you and Westbrook involved? No, Olivia answered honestly. But he sees me, Richard. He values my mind, my work, my perspective. When was the last time you did that? This is about more than just appreciation, Richard said, his tone hardening. You've changed. I've remembered who I am, Olivia corrected. There's a difference. Later, that afternoon, Olivia met Thomas for coffee in the building's atrium. Their working relationship had quickly evolved into a comfortable friendship built on mutual respect and shared vision. Thomas asked, stirring. His Americano. About as well as expected, she sighed. He wants to start fresh, now that I'm connected to your world. Thomas shook his head. And what do you want, Olivia? The question hung in the air, both simple and profound. For years, Olivia had subordinated her wants to Richard's ambitions, her needs to his expectations. I want to feel valued for who I am, not who someone wants me to be, she finally answered. I want to build something meaningful. She hesitated, then met Thomas's gaze directly. I want to file for divorce. Saying the words aloud lifted a weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. Thomas reached across the table and briefly squeezed her hand. You've always been stronger than you give yourself credit for, he said. That night in the coffee shop, you saved me with your wisdom and kindness. I'm honored to witness you saving yourself now. That evening, Olivia returned home earlier than usual. Richard was waiting, a bouquet of expensive roses on the counter between them. "I've been thinking about what you said," he began. "You're right. I haven't appreciated you. We can fix this." Olivia set her purse down beside the flowers. "Signed a lease on an apartment. I'm moving out this weekend." Richard's face hardened. "Because of Westbrook? Is that what this is about?" "This is about me," Olivia replied calmly. "It's about the life I want versus the life you've expected me to accept. They're not the same anymore." As she began packing her belongings, Olivia felt not grief, but relief, the sensation of breaking chains that had bound her for far too long, and state of fearing it. 6 months later, Olivia stood on the same balcony where she'd reconnected with Thomas during the gala. The Westbrook Foundation was hosting its inaugural fundraising event, and as its executive director, she had spent weeks ensuring every detail was perfect. The divorce had been finalized 3 months ago. Richard had fought it initially, vacillating between accusations and promises to change, but eventually recognized the inevitable. The settlement. Olivia had asked for little beyond her personal belongings and her freedom. "There you are," came Thomas's voice behind her. "Hiding from your own success?" Olivia smiled, turning to face him, just taking a moment to appreciate how much has changed. He joined her at the railing, their shoulders nearly touching. In the months they'd worked together, their relationship had evolved gradually, professional respect deepening into friendship, and friendship blossoming into something more. They had moved carefully, both aware of the complexities of their positions and their individual healing journeys. The foundation has already funded literacy programs in 15 schools. Thomas noted proudly, "That's all because of you." "Because of us," she corrected. "Your vision, my implementation." Inside, the ballroom buzzed with conversation and laughter. Unlike the corporate gala months earlier, this event was filled with educators, community leaders and philanthropists who shared Olivia's passion for accessible education. "Ready to go back in?" Thomas asked, offering his arm. As they re-entered, Olivia froze momentarily. Near the bar stood Richard, alongside his new boss, Catherine Blackwell, Jason's ex-wife and recently appointed senior vice president at Harrington Financial. "I didn't realize he'd be here," Thomas murmured apologetically. "It's okay," Olivia assured him. "Actually, I should say hello." She crossed the room with confident steps, aware of how different she must appear to Richard now, not just in her tailored designer dress, but in her posture, her presence, her power. "Richard," she greeted him calmly, "I'm glad you could make it." He seemed startled by her approach. "Olivia, you look ... different." "Happy," she supplied. "I look happy." Catherine Blackwell extended her hand. "Olivia Bennett, I've heard remarkable things about your work. Our marketing department is eager to collaborate on the foundation's next campaign. We'd welcome that," Olivia replied graciously. Richard shifted uncomfortably. "Your foundation is doing well, then?" "Beyond our expectations," Olivia confirmed. "Though that's not really why I came over." "Oh," Richard questioned. "I wanted to thank you," she said simply. Confusion flickered across his face. "Thank me? For what?" "For showing me exactly what I didn't want in my life," Olivia explained without malice. "Sometimes we need to recognize what's wrong before we can find what's right." Before Richard could respond, Thomas appeared at Olivia's side, his hand gently touching the small of her back, the same gesture Richard had once used to guide and control her, now transformed into one of equal partnership. "Ms. Blackwell, a pleasure to meet you," Thomas said. "I see you've met our extraordinary executive director." Catherine smiled. "Indeed, she's exactly as impressive as you described." Later that night, after the last guests had departed, Olivia and Thomas walked through the quiet ballroom, surveying the evidence of a successful evening. 15 years ago, I never imagined I'd be here, Thomas reflected, running a foundation with the woman who saved my life. Olivia took his hand. "That night in the coffee shop, I told you that sometimes the darkest moments lead to unexpected gifts. I was right for both of us." Thomas stopped walking, turning to face her fully. "Olivia, there's something I've been wanting to ask you." Yes, she said, her heart quickening. Would you have dinner with me tomorrow night? Not as colleagues or friends, but as something more. Olivia smiled, the final pieces of her new life falling perfectly into place. I thought you'd never ask. Outside, the city lights sparkled against the night sky, much like they had on that rainy evening 15 years ago, when two strangers found each other in a coffee shop, one desperate and broken, the other quietly strong and wise beyond her years. Now they stood together again, paths having diverged and reconnected in ways neither could have imagined. What had begun with a whispered reminder had transformed into a second chance, for both of them proof that sometimes the smallest moments can change everything, and that recognizing your own worth is the first step toward finding the life you deserve.